Gojo versus Makima is a clash between two completely mutually exclusive forms of absolute defense. On one hand, you have Gojo. His defense is a fundamental rewrite of the rules of space around him. Any attack moving towards him has to cross an indefinite distance before it ever reaches him. This is his passive, always-on defense called Infinity, and it's the reason why you see Gojo dominating power scaling debates more than Sukuna, even though Sukuna technically won their fight. The reason is that Gojo's hacks gives him a lot of leverage even against opponents from verses that scale higher than Jujutsu Kaisen. Because unless you come up with something on the same level as Sukuna's world-cutting slash, you cannot bypass Gojo's Infinity. On the other hand, there's Makima. Her power operates on a completely different, almost legalistic level. She is the control devil, and her defense is quite literally a contract with the Prime Minister of Japan. This contract is simple. Any and all damage, basically all forms of attack that target Makima, are instead transferred to a random citizen of Japan who suddenly dies of an equivalent accident or illness. One thing to keep in mind is that this ability activates against any act performed with the intent to harm her. This is why Denji was able to defeat her. He attacked her not with the intention to harm her, but out of love to end her misery. That's how his attack bypassed the conditions of the contract and killed her. He then cooked her body and ate her, which also didn't count as an attack intended to harm her. In both cases, you can see that it took an extremely unconventional method to kill Gojo and Makima in their respective universes. And until they were finally killed, both of them were thought to be nigh invincible. So, who do you think will win if it was Gojo versus Makima? Will Gojo's domain expansion paralyze Makima? Even if Unlimited Void does paralyze her, how does Gojo actually kill her while she's stunned without triggering the contract? Does he just have to keep her in the domain forever? Would Makima's bang bypass Infinity? Of course, I know you have your opinions on how this is going to end, but one thing I'm going to say is that the actual answer is going to surprise you. This fight definitely doesn't go down the same way you saw it go down on Death Battle. First, we're going to clarify some misconceptions about their abilities, then we're going to break down their win conditions, and finally, there will be the simulation that'll show you exactly how it goes down. First, let's clear up some misconceptions about Gojo's Infinity. We know it's a passive automatic filter that applies the concept of infinity to the space around him. Again, remember that it does not block, it simply makes the distance to him infinite. Any object or energy approaching is forced to cross an infinite series of smaller and smaller distances to the point that it never actually reaches him. Of course, even though the explanation is straightforward, there are still some major misconceptions. Misconception number one, it's a force field that can be overpowered with enough strength. Absolutely not. Strength is irrelevant. Even if you're Goku, you cannot punch through infinity because it's a mathematical concept. The only way to beat it is to bypass the concept of crossing space entirely. Misconception number two, Gojo has to consciously activate it. No, it's passive and always on. His 6 eyes and almost perfect cursed energy efficiency allow him to run it 24/7 without any thought or effort. He can't be caught off guard. Plus, thanks to that same efficiency, Gojo is always in peak condition. I mean, how you feel after 8 hours of sleep, fully hydrated with no hangovers whatsoever, or how Perfect Cell was moving after absorbing 18. Misconception number three, it only stops physical things. This is a reasonable doubt. I mean, he's not stopping oxygen from reaching him, so many fans question the extent of Infinity. Basically, Gojo allows non-threatening things like air, sunlight, and light to pass through. Now, within the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, Infinity can be overpowered with the domain expansion, or affected by domain amplification. Also, cursed tools imbued with specialized curse techniques can disturb or dispel Infinity. Next up, we have misconceptions about Makima and her abilities. We've already broken down her contract with the Prime Minister, though you still see some stupid misconceptions like, you just need to kill her faster than she can heal, which is obviously not true. You would need to kill over 120 million people or attack her in a way the contract doesn't recognize as damage. But while our contract is very clear, there are still major misconceptions about her powers. So let's clear the air. Misconception number one, Makima's bang is an invincible projectile. This is fair, but not exactly the right framing. At the very least, we know that her force manipulation isn't just an invisible projectile that travels through space. When Makima used it against the Darkness Devil, its force manifested inside the Devil's body by bypassing its own force field. This means her power is like force manipulation that can ignore conventional barriers and spatial distance. It applies force directly to a target, kind of like a telekinetic blast. It's also very overpowered. Makima shooting Chainsaw Man into space with bang is far above anything we've ever seen Gojo do with his Hollow Purple. Misconception number two, her control ability is based on raw raw power, she can't control someone stronger than her. Her control is actually based on her perception of hierarchy, not a direct power level contest. She controls those she genuinely sees as lesser. But it's Makima versus Gojo, not Makima versus Bumgami. Yes, it's basically impossible for this to work on Gojo. I mean, he personally said, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one." How is Makima possibly going to control this gentleman? Even the angel devil was able to snap out of Makima's control, so the control ability is effectively irrelevant in this matchup. Misconception number 3, she's just a strategist who relies on her contracts. In a straight fight, she's weak. I doubt anyone who's read or seen Chainsaw Man thinks that. This is more about those who's only consumed the story through agenda memes. Let me clarify that her raw strength was great enough to keep up and eventually overpower a clone of Chainsaw Man with her bare hands to the point where she was able to rip off his limbs and punch holes into him. Next, there's also the sacrifice ritual and more, but we'll mention that later. For now, this is all the information we need to talk about the win conditions. For Gojo to win, he has to either find a way to hurt Makima without the intention of hurting her, or he'll have to kill over 120 million people. Now, I've seen some arguments that sound good in theory, but they don't hold up when you really think about it. For example, Gojo's hollow purple combines attraction, as in blue, and repulsion as in red, to create an imaginary mass technique with insane attack potency. The argument here is that hollow purple might just straight up erase Makima from existence, which will leave nothing for the contract to protect. But this operates on the assumption that hollow purple is like Hawkeye from Dragon Ball, that it literally erases things from existence. That's not true. While hollow purple is created from imaginary mass, it is still just about causing massive destruction. I'd say in practice, it's much more like the tailed beast ball from Naruto than Hawkeye from Dragon Ball Super. Besides, even if we assume hollow purple erases you, Gojo will just be erasing a random civilian instead of Makima. The only reason Denji won is because he was acting out of a form of love. Gojo, on the other hand, would be the very definition of hostile intent, especially because in Makima's eyes, he can't be controlled. So the only way Gojo could kill Makima is by killing everyone in Japan, like what his best buddy Geto wanted. Imagine he one-shots Makima 100 times, or even 1,000 times. The moment he learns that all he has done is kill random people, you bet he's going to take that pretty seriously and may even surrender. All in all, it's not impossible. Geto even said that Gojo can do it, but it is not the best win condition, if I must say so myself. Next, we have Unlimited Void. In theory, this looks like the more reliable win condition. We know Gojo's domain expansion doesn't cause physical damage. It floods the target's mind with infinite information, which renders them unable to do a thing. Since it's not a direct attack on the body, it may not even trigger the damage transfer, right? No. In Chapter 70, we saw the Cosmos Fiend from Chainsaw Man can also flood her victims with information of the universe, which is a direct parallel of Unlimited Void's information overload. However, in the same chapter, Makima decapitated her. And while not everyone would agree that Cosmos Fiend tried using her power on Makima, the panel does imply that she did. She said, "Halloween," but Makima had no reaction to it. Makima simply said, "A corpse is talking," and beheaded her along with Quan Shi and the other fiend. Okay, so there's a character in Chainsaw Man who could use Unlimited Void, and Makima's reaction to it was to send her head flying. What does this mean? This sort of ability is not a threat to Makima. That makes sense because the contract's definition of damage is not limited to physical damage. The instant Unlimited Void hits Makima, its effect would be transferred to a civilian. Makima would be unaffected. Plus, there's an escape route. Remember, Makima could channel the power of her victims by summoning them through chains. We've seen her use the abilities of Angel Devil, Future Devil, Snake Devil, Punishment Devil, Spider Devil, and Zombie Devil. She can use the ability of the Future Devil to see the immediate future, and use the ability of the Spider Devil to summon herself out of the domain before the full paralysis sets in. Not that she needed to do this, just that she has options. Besides, another evidence of Unlimited Void not working is that we know for a fact Sukuna was able to divert the damage of Unlimited Void to Megumi's soul. Makima's entire thing is diverting damage to a random citizen of Japan, so she'll handle Unlimited Void just fine. Also, imagine if Sukuna had a binding vow that transferred any damage to 120 million random people. Ultimately, both Hollow Purple and Unlimited Void are not the kind of guaranteed win conditions against Makima that they usually are. The only reliable way is to exhaust the 120 million people plus lives she has. Now, does that mean Gojo will lose? Not so fast. Let's also talk about Makima's win conditions. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. Control control, which is usually Makima's main win condition, will be mute because she cannot control Gojo. He is him. That's all. It won't work. So the first real win condition would be force projection, as in the bang attack. We know that the way it covers distance is whack. I mean, in chapter 88, how did Chainsaw Man just immediately end up in space? And we know in chapter 66, Makima used force projection to bypass the Darkness Devil's own powerful force barrier. She actually damaged the Darkness Devil by scrambling its insides, despite the fact that the Darkness Devil is objectively stronger than her. Again, this implies that her force control ability simply manifests on the target rather than traveling a distance. If her force power had clashed conventionally with the Darkness Devil's force power, the Darkness Devil, who is one of the 4 primordial devils, would have overpowered it. So I'd say Bang affecting Gojo makes sense. It definitely makes more sense than Hollow Purple bypassing Makima's contract. Next, we also have other win conditions. The second win condition is Sacrifice Ritual. This is actually well talked about in Makima vs. Gojo discussions. Basically, Makima can instantly teleport away thanks to the Spider Devil, perform the Sacrifice Ritual, and kill Gojo by having someone say his name. This ability is pure causality manipulation and voodoo-style hacks. It would bypass all his defenses because it does not interact with the target's defenses at all. It simply imposes death based on a condition, which in this case is hearing one's name from a sacrifice. Plus, even if Gojo locks in and decides to take care of every Japanese citizen, and also ignores that he himself is a citizen of Japan as well, Makima can come up with any number of counters for Gojo. Like, how about the Hell Devil? Makima can send Gojo to hell to be mogged by primordial devils. This is a fair win condition. If she can successfully target him with this, he can have fun with the primordial devils in hell. I don't think he can return from hell. It's not like he could break out of the prison realm by himself. So how will he break out of hell? Gojo has no such ability. The only counter is to keep Makima from contracting the Hell Devil. Now, let's talk about the Angel Devil's 1,000-year weapon. This weapon, created from 1,000 years of lifespan, has spatial manipulation properties. But first, let's confirm if it works like Sukuna's world-cutting slash. You see, Sukuna's slash targets the world, existence, and the space itself that the victim inhabits. Basically, in simple language, instead of cutting Gojo, he cut the coordinates that Gojo existed in. But again, how did it bypass infinity? Infinity defends against phenomena that travel through space. Sukuna's slash basically manifests as a property of reality at the destination. It effectively erased the space Gojo's body occupied. It's a metaspatial attack that bypasses the infinite division problem by not interacting with it. So how does this spear compare? When the 1,000-year spear was thrown, it appeared to warp or phase through matter, and it negated the near instantaneous regeneration of the hybrids. So if the weapon's edge literally warps or cuts space as it moves, it could theoretically slice through the infinitely divided space of infinity. It wouldn't be crossing the distance so much as deleting the space in front of it. But is that the same as Sukuna's slash? No. Sukuna's slash targets the concept of the world. The 1,000-year spear cuts through space. There is a difference. The spear does not show the same level of conceptual reality targeting power. So yes, it can be a factor, but I wouldn't call it a guaranteed one like Sukuna's. Overall, Makima's most direct win condition is her bang attack, which has a canonical feat of bypassing a spatial defense by manifesting force directly on the target. This is her most reliable method. The 1,000-year spear might be able to cut through infinity, but this is less certain than bang. And of course, there's always the sacrifice ritual and the Hell Devil that can be counted as game over win conditions if she can pull them off. Finally, it's time to see how it all go down. You can argue that this looks like a stalemate. Infinity keeps Gojo from getting hurt. The contract renders anything Gojo does mute. It ultimately comes down to if Gojo can kill over 120 million or if Makima can kill Gojo, and who will get to the dub first. Now, as we've already talked about, neither Unlimited Void nor Hollow Purple would bypass the contract. Unfortunately, Gojo's paths to victory are narrow, speculative, and have strong evidence against them. Meanwhile, Makima has multiple diverse win conditions, and at least one of them has a canonical precedent for bypassing a defense that functions similarly to Infinity. Bang has been shown to bypass spatial force-based defenses by manifesting its effect directly on the target. And no, Power's crater on the wall does not disprove this. The crater was bigger than the portion of Power's torso taken out, and there was massive blood splatter, which makes it clear that the crater was actually from the force of Power's torso hitting the wall. So all Makima needs to do are 120 plus million lives as time to hit Gojo with Bang multiple times in the right places. Strike him with the 1,000-year spear, try sending him to hell, or pull off the sacrifice contract. It's definitely going to take Gojo days, if not weeks or months, to kill her 120 million times. He can't can't spam unlimited void an infinite number of times every single day forever, and Makima is not like Santa Claus. Santa's dolls were all connected to a single consciousness through a curse. So overloading one overloaded the network. Makima's contract is different. Each life is a separate sequential transfer of damage to a random citizen. Gojo's unlimited void cannot take out 120 million lives in one go because the information overload happening to Makima will not be transferred to every citizen simultaneously. So the win conditions are stacked in Makima's favor. She only needs to kill Gojo once, but of course Gojo is not a passive target. While I went to great lengths to debunk the misconceptions about Makima's bang and force manipulation, I'll also admit that the mechanics of bang are not 100% explicit. Does it truly have no time travel or interaction with space? Or does it simply move imperceptibly fast? All I've explained here is that the evidence strongly suggests the former, but it's still possible that if it has any property of travel, infinity stops it. Plus, while I can't imagine bang being just as potent as Sukuna's world-cutting slash, I can also imagine Gojo being far more careful. He won't be relaxed like he was after he thought he defeated Sukuna in chapter 235, so it's reasonable to assume that Makima won't be able to one-shot him with bang immediately. Next, the sacrifice ritual and Hell Devil attacks. I presented these as not I'd win buttons, but their practicality in a fight is questionable. Both require setup. The sacrifice ritual needs a ritual and someone to speak the name. The Hell Devil requires a contract as well. Gojo can absolutely interrupt her, so the fight ultimately depends on how Makima will get herself enough time to pull these off. By the way, to make things more clear, I know that when Death Battle did Gojo vs Makima, Gojo won and Death Battle always cooks with their videos. But their analysis for this matchup had questionable logic. They stated that Unlimited Void would work because even if she could transfer it, she still could not escape an infinite amount of information. They compare this to the Doll Devil, who was overwhelmed trying to transfer consciousness across a finite amount of bodies. As I just mentioned, this is a fundamental misreading of Makima's contract. In fact, while Makima was delegating the damage from Unlimited Void, she'll have the opportunity to catch Gojo off guard, and his would overwhelm the system is clever, but it's not something proven in Chainsaw Man. We never see the contract fail or be overwhelmed in the manga, so assuming it has a capacity is pure speculation. Death Battle also ruled that Unlimited Void isn't an attack as defined by the contract. This is a very specific and arguably narrow interpretation. An attack is any hostile action intended to harm or subdue an opponent. Gojo using his domain on Makima, undeniably a hostile act. If the contract's magic interprets any harmful intent or effect as an attack, then Unlimited Void should be transferred, even if it's metaphysical damage. Seriously, what is an attack? This is the vaguest and most crucial part of the contract. The Chainsaw Man universe is full of abstract powers. We should all assume that a contract born from the fear of control would have a very broad, powerful definition of attack to preserve its user, right? Finally, while Death Battle correctly identified that Makima's bang is a conceptual attack that manifests damage directly on the target by bypassing projectile travel, they downplayed its effectiveness. If the bang can bypass infinity, it is a legitimate and immediate threat. Consecutive bangs targeting his head or heart could theoretically kill him faster than he can heal, or at least keep him permanently on the defensive because he can't use Unlimited Void while using reversed curse technique. Overall, Death Battle gave Gojo every benefit of the doubt while not extending the same energy to Makima's abilities. Makima wins because Gojo's primary win conditions, Hollow Purple and Unlimited Void, are effectively neutralized by Makima's contract, while Makima has several methods that can potentially bypass Gojo's infinity. The fight would still be a complex battle of hacks, but Makima's durability and versatile set of abilities, plus the precedent of bang bypassing special defenses, give her the edge. She can also afford to make mistakes thanks to over 120 million lives. Gojo cannot. If he dies to any of Makima's win conditions, that's it.